All right, man, peace. So this is going to be the third and final part of the series on Mr. Allen Iverson. He's already gone over his past as well as what he thinks about the All right, man, peace. So now this is going to be the third and final part in regards to the series on Mr. Allen Iverson. He's already given his take on his former life, meaning a lot of the bad decisions that he's made and the reasons behind them, as well as how he views the current state of the NBA. So let's see what else he has to say. Of course, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
Welcome back. Still hanging with us, the Hall of Famer Allen Iverson down there with Stephen A.
This brought Molly Karam. She don't know if she want to wear them glasses, take them off. From segment to segment, she got them on. She's taking them off.
Philly, gentlemen, I'll send it out to you.
Molly, I got a couple of questions that I asked. Allow me to have the floor here with this man. A couple of things that I want to throw by.
I just want to say, Allen Iverson, how could you have the audacity, the temerity, the unmitigated gall to have a nice hairline like that and cover it with a hat? I would cut off my left pinky to have a hairline like yours. Continue on, Molly.
About you, because I mean, listen, you know, I heard your answers. You were very nice to a few people, but that's okay. That's okay. But here's my question to you. LeBron James and Philadelphia. We've been hearing that the Philadelphia, that he would complete the process, go out and get LeBron James. How do you feel about the thought of LeBron James possibly, potentially becoming a Philadelphia 76er?
Well, supposedly, allegedly, LeBron or one of the members of his team were out in Philadelphia scouting out potential schools for his children. That's alleged. I don't know how true that is. But would it surprise me if LeBron James went to the Philadelphia 76ers? No, it would not. And I actually made a video about that earlier this season, even before the 76ers were considered a serious threat to get to the NBA Finals. That was a possible destination for Mr. LeBron James.
I would love it.
Really?
Definitely be something. That would definitely be on my bucket list.
Really?
I would love to see
Really?
That's unstoppable right there.
That's not even fair. You usually don't like fair. You like a balance of power. You like cats competing against one another. Now you talk about LeBron joining Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid.
I think that Allen Iverson has already established over the course of this interview that he is going to take the positive angle for any question that he's asked pertaining to the current state of the NBA. No matter who he's talking about, whether it's Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Paul George, LeBron James, he's going to take the positive route, which is good for him. I think that he purposefully did not want to be associated with the sentiment that he's a bitter old head. And we saw that in full display a couple of seasons ago when so many old heads came out of the woodwork to try to demean and denigrate and diminish the accomplishments of Steph Curry. We heard from Isaiah Thomas, we heard from Oscar Robertson, Charles Barkley. They were all over the television talking about how easy it would be to play in this current NBA. How true that is? Yeah, there's some truths to that it would be a little bit easier for certain players to play in this current NBA, but it would be more difficult in other ways because they would have to acclimate their style of play to this current NBA. They would have to elongate their jump shots. They'd have to stretch out their range, which is not always as easy as it might sound. But could Oscar Robertson dominate today? Of course. I'm a believer that great players in any era would dominate in any era, because what a great player can do is they can change their game. They can adapt. But I just thought that a lot of the scrutiny that Curry was put through 2 years ago was unnecessary. And just getting back to the point, I see that Iverson is woefully trying to avoid being typecast as a very bitter old head player, and I think that it's very smart on his part to try to avoid that.
That doesn't seem to be the Allen Iverson I remember.
Right, but when you look at it, it's a piece that you know will work. You know what I mean? A lot of times we're having this conversation about the guys in OKC. You know what I mean? But this will definitely work. You know, you got all those young guys, then him with his veteran leadership. Knowing how to do it, showing them how to do it, it'll just be a good thing for us, and it won't change anybody's game. You know, definitely our point guard want to get that thing up. You know what I mean? Ben is looking to make everybody better. You know, and the same as Embiid. You know what I mean? And we have the pieces. With LeBron, we can make it happen.
You talked about Ben Simmons and how he want to give that thing up. You know, one of the things that you called me, let the viewers know, you called and got on me pretty hard about this, that I had Donovan Mitchell as my rookie of the year instead of Ben Simmons. The floor is yours. You got a problem with that, evidently.
I think that Donovan Mitchell most likely should be the rookie of the year. I mean, optimally, it would be best that the NBA split the award, but as we all know, according to the voting mechanisms, that's almost impossible to determine whether or not it's going to be a split award. But I think that Donovan Mitchell is most likely more deserving, and I will admit that my thinking has been heavily influenced by his first round performance, and as we all know, that does not factor into the Rookie of the Year award. But this was the first time that I've been able to view him and how he plays extensively, and he thoroughly impressed me. I cannot state how highly I've been impressed by his level of play and his maturity off the court.
I don't have a problem with it because I know what type of season Donovan Mitchell is having. I mean, he's phenomenal, man, and they need to check his ID, honestly, because somebody 21 years old doing something like this is remarkable.
And he's mastered that spin move. He does it so fast and powerfully that it almost always works because he dribbles so hard to the right that just for his defender to keep up with him, he has to commit his body. And when Donovan starts to perform that spin, the defender's momentum is going to stop him from being able to keep up with Donovan after he does that pivot inside.
You know what I mean? And, you know, he's leading the team himself, you know what I mean, with some great guys around him. They play the game the right way. They're definitely well coached. And Ben is having a great season, man. He's done some things some rookies haven't been able to do, man. And both of them are having phenomenal seasons. But again, I'm very, very biased when it comes to my Sixers, man. And I really think he deserves it.
Go ahead, man. Obviously, Ben Simmons is the runner. Donovan Mitchell's great. Doesn't mean he's rookie of the year. Ben Simmons is the guy, clearly. And
well, Ben Simmons is the player that we all think is going to be the most transcendent player over the next 15 years because we believe just by watching him, seeing his combination of stature and overall wherewithal on the court, his ability to see things happen before they do, also his tact, his discernment, his prudence. He does not allow himself to become flabbergasted by anything that is intended to throw him off of his game. He just overall has everything that you'd want in a point guard. So it's easy to be highly impressed by Ben Simmons. Because when we look at a player like him, we're seeing 12 years down the line, how many championships is he going to lead the Philadelphia 76ers to? When you look at Donovan Mitchell, we see a player that is awe-inspiring because of his athletic ability, his skill level. But we know that if you've seen enough championship-level teams, it's going to be very hard to build that team up into a championship-level squad, the Utah Jazz. Especially with him as the best player, because the history of the NBA tells us that when you have a player like him who's going to dominate the basketball, they also need a dominant big man. Because the last player that we've seen in the NBA who played like him and was able to win a championship with a player like him as the best player was the D-Wade 2006 Miami Heat. And as we all know, they had great big man play from Shaq as well as Alonzo Mourning.
And AI, I totally agree with you about LeBron James. I was the first person to bring it up in the national media in a final take last year. He should go to the Sixers. That would be unstoppable. But I want to ask you about Simmons and Embiid. The only comp I have in the history of basketball that I can think of to those two guys that young, that good at those positions are Penny Hardaway and Shaquille O'Neal. I can't think of any other big point guard center combination that young on the same team, except for those two.
That's a great comparison. I've heard Max Kellerman bring that comparison up before, and I agree totally.
And those two failed to win a championship together.
Well, the main reason why they failed to win a championship together was because they were so physically dominant that they were precocious. They almost got there too soon. And then by the time that they were expected to win a championship, Michael Jordan came back in his fullness. and he swept them in 1996. That, in combination with the fact that Shaquille O'Neal was jealous of Penny Hardaway's burgeoning stardom, precipitated him leaving Orlando to go to a bigger pond out there in LA. So that pairing of those two superstars was almost fated not to work because the timing was just totally off.
What do Embiid and Simmons have to do to make sure that they don't meet the same fate, that they actually win a championship together?
I don't think that Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid will fall prey to the same insidious spirit that befell Penny Hardaway and Shaquille O'Neal, because I think that both Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid were raised in much more conventional and positive environments, which fostered that element of working together as opposed to trying to see who could one-up the other. And we saw that so much in the 1990s, where young players were paired or teamed up on teams where they were expected to lead the NBA into the 2000s, and it never worked out, whether it was Jason Kidd, Jamal Mashburn, and Jim Jackson on the Dallas Mavericks, or Kevin Garnett and Stephon Marbury on the Minnesota Timberwolves, or in Milwaukee, where you had Ray Allen and Glenn Robinson. For whatever reason, those matchups didn't work. Or in Philadelphia with AI as well as Jerry Stackhouse. Once again, the 1990s was the me era, as I stated in the opening of video number 1. And it was very, very difficult for a lot of young players to team up together at that time period, because everyone was looking to see who could be the big man on the team, who could be the alpha, who can get the most endorsements, because that to them is what alpha meant. Alpha did not mean I'm the one who's going to lead the team because I know the most about basketball and I know what's best for the team. Alpha meant I have to get the most shots because I want the most endorsements, because I want the most bitches. That's what that translated to. And that also was part and parcel of the music that helped establish the thought process of many of those brothers back then. That's why, once again, one of the best things that the NBA ever did was to controvert that quote-unquote thug hip-hop culture that was starting to permeate the NBA in the late 90s into the early 2000s. It helped save the league. Nothing against AI. He will always be a notable aspect of the counterculture component that tried to creep into sports in the late 90s, early 2000s. Himself, Randy Moss, Michael Vick. But there's a reason why all three of those brothers are considered quote-unquote heroes, but it's also understood that they never truly were able to reach their full potential and optimize the gifts that they had, because they were more concerned about being in hip-hop videos and trying to perpetuate an image about themselves as being rebellious and being agents of chaos than they were actually succeeding in their chosen field of endeavor.
First of all, I never thought about it. I never thought about it like that, and that's a great comparison. I just think not taking away from whoever the coach was back then, because I definitely don't remember, and the teammates that surrounded those guys. But that's the most important thing. You got to have those other pieces, those other role players around that understand their job, understand what they're going to do night in and night out, and that play every game like it's their last.
And beyond that, this is no longer the me era. This is the sharing era. So it's much easier for players to team up now than it was back in the 90s. Once again, you have to have lived through certain time periods to understand the atmosphere, what was going on at that time. Michael Jordan established the me era in professional basketball, and he was able to make it look so good. He was able to make it look appealing, because from the outside looking in, everybody saw, wow, Jordan's getting 25 shots a game, 20 to 25 shots a game. But they were not also noticing that he was making 50% of his shots, and they were pretty much in an equal opportunity offense in the triangle offense. It just so happened that Jordan was able to get his shot easier than other players. Even when they were in the same position, he was able to do things to optimize his role within that offense. And when other teams tried to institute the hero ball style to appease their young talent, it never worked, because they were not Jordan, and they did not have the geometric understanding of how important the triangle offense was to optimizing the talent that the Bulls had. So it took the NBA a very long time to finally grasp that they had to force players to move the ball. And one of the ways that you force players to move the ball was to get rid of that hip-hop culture, which was all about self-glorification in the late 90s into the early 2000s. You had to get rid of that shit, man. And once again, a lot of brothers not going to like that, but it is what it is.
And you got to have a guy over there on that bench calling the right plays and making the right substitutions and getting his point across to those guys.
Go ahead, Molly.
Hey, let's go finals. If you were a betting man, who would you pick going, and who would you pick? Okay, we're not here in the media. Just want to put that out there on Front Street. Who you got going? Who you got winning?
I got Golden State on the West. Damn.
Say it.
I like Houston though, but I got Golden State on the West.
Go with your first mind.
With a healthy Steph, I got Golden State. And in the East, us, definitely.
And who'd you pick to win the finals, bro? Let's be for real. You're not picking Philadelphia to win in the finals over Golden State and putting money down on that. I don't believe you, bro. You need more people.
Really?
I like that.
Sure?
And that's a bet.
Okay.
So obviously, I believe in us.
All right.
So you got Philadelphia. You got Philadelphia going up against the Golden State Warriors. Right now, as we look at the Philadelphia 76ers.
That's why Reebok had to develop a trust fund to protect Allen Iverson from himself. Once again, the brother was able to optimize the gifts that were given to him. Physically, not mentally. Physically, he was. Mentally, if he understood the game, he would have been the greatest little man to ever play. As it is, it's Isaiah Thomas, because Isaiah Thomas had the physical and the mental all in one. Isaiah was not as gifted physically as Allen Iverson was. Not quite. Even though Isaiah Thomas was extremely gifted physically, but mentally, it wasn't even close. Isaiah Thomas and Allen Iverson had that same dog in them, but Isaiah Thomas understood the game at such a high level. That's what makes him the greatest little man to ever play. But once again, Allen Iverson was an agent of chaos in the NBA and also in his own life, and thankfully for him, Reebok protected him against himself. That's why he still has money to bet on the Philadelphia 76ers.
I mean, listen, they play tonight against Miami. Miami's going to go down swinging. This could, if Miami loses, this could be the last game of D. Wade's career. You got to think about that, and you also got to think about the road that awaits Philadelphia, assuming they get past Miami. What concerns you most about the Eastern Conference when you think about the Philadelphia 76ers trying to get to the finals?
The thing that should concern Allen the most, being a Philadelphia 76ers fan, is their lack of experience, which can show, especially going up against a top-notch coach like a Brad Stevens, because he will have his team ready. They will understand the X's and O's of exactly what the Philadelphia 76ers are trying to do. And even though they're short-armed right now, they don't have their best player in Kyrie Irving. They don't have, allegedly, their second-best player in Jaylen Brown. They are going to be coached up, and they still have more talent than the Miami Heat have. And they're slightly better coached than the Miami Heat are. So I expect that series to go a very long way. I'll probably give my official prediction in another video. But that's going to be a very long series, the Philadelphia 76ers against the Boston Celtics. But it'll be good for Philly for that series to go long so that they can learn from playing the Boston Celtics.
Just the fact that
assuming they win that series.
The East is a lot more talented than it has been. And other guys feel the same way we feel. You know what I mean? They believe in themselves and they believe in their teammates, their coaching staff, and their fans.
Stop right there. Would you be as comfortable or as confident if Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward were healthy in Boston right now playing? Would you be this confident about Philadelphia?
I would be confident, but that's definitely scary. That's definitely scary. You take Kyrie off a team, there's a major drop, and they definitely were looking forward to having Gordon in that rotation. Well, no, he was starting, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, you take Hayward out, man, that's tough. You know what I mean? So that lets you know how serious they're going to be for years to come. And they're still a good team.
Go ahead.
It's going to be very interesting to see how good Gordon Hayward is when he finally steps back out on the basketball court, particularly how well he moves, because he's going to be expected to guard the opposing team's shooting guards and or small forwards. In today's NBA, you have to do a lot of running even when guarding players that don't have the basketball. So it's going to be interesting to see how good he is on the court.
Go ahead, Max.
Well, it seems to me, AI, that the balance of power could swing west to east for the first time in like forever. If LeBron goes to Philly and Kyrie and Hayward just get healthy, or they figure out a Kyrie situation, a Kawhi situation in Boston, that's it. It's just Philly and Boston for a while, right? You see anything interrupting that? If those...
Right, but would that indeed shift the balance of power in the NBA to the Eastern Conference? Are you saying that Philadelphia and Boston would be better than the Golden State Warriors and the Houston Rockets, Max Kellerman? I don't think that it would shift the balance of power. I think that it would make the East viable candidates. You could make the case that it would be even Steven for the first time in a long time. If LeBron were to go to the Philadelphia 76ers and Boston were to have a healthy Kyrie and Gordon Hayward return to that team and maybe even land a big man, who knows?
Those things happen.
Because you got some other great teams in the East, you know what I mean, that I love to get my popcorn and check out night in and night out, you know what I mean? And that's just great for us.
I agree. And once again, I think that it would be best for LeBron James to go to the Miami Heat. I think that they have everything that he needs right now for his style of play, what he likes to do. They have a lot of scrappy players. They have players who can make threes. They have a bunch of players who love to play defense. He would not have to worry about having to guard his man or play free safety. He could funnel all the drivers to Hassan Whiteside. He has James Johnson on that team. He has Goran Dragic on that team. Maybe he could convince his homeboy D Wade to come back for another season. I think that they could make a championship run if he were to go back to Miami. When I say a championship run, not necessarily win a title, but they can get back to the finals if he were to go back to Miami.
It's just great for the fans. It's just going to continue to get better and better. You know what I mean? This league is colossal. You know what I mean? And you know, the guys that's running this whole show, not looking back at anything.
What are your thoughts about the Houston Rockets? I mean, they're the best team in basketball record-wise. They're going to have the MVP as far as I'm concerned. CP3 is a monster. He's special. And Clint Capella and the rest of their supporting cast are no joke either, which is why Max has picked them. What are your thoughts about the Houston Rockets right now, and why is it that you have Golden State beating them with a healthy Steph Curry?
The Houston Rockets versus Golden State matchup, assuming they meet, is going to be a colossal, titanic matchup. Just from what I see watching the Rockets, they do seem to be for real, and they have committed to playing some type of defense. Now, there's going to be a huge jump upward from playing the Minnesota Timberwolves in the first round and the Utah Jazz in the second round to presumably the Golden State Warriors in the third round. So we're finally going to get many of our questions answered in regards to Mike D'Antoni, James Harden, and Chris Paul, if they're ready. We'll see. I want to see how they react if Golden State is able to shut down that play where Harden drives to the basket and either goes in for a layup or throws up an alley-oop to Clint Capella. I want to see how they react and respond. I want to see what happens to the Houston Rockets when, not if, but when James Harden has one of those 3 for 20 games. I want to see how they respond if Chris Paul gets tight down the stretch and throws the ball away. We'll see.
I love the Houston Rockets. I love the way they're playing now. I love James. It's definitely personal with me and Chris, you know what I mean? But at the same time, with me loving him the way I do as a person, I mean, he's playing phenomenal. You know what I mean? We talk about how LeBron is playing the way he's playing at his age. Look what CP3 is doing. You know what I mean? I think they bought into D'Antoni's system and they running it to perfection. You know what I mean? It's going to be, like I said, it's going to be a dogfight of those two running to each other.
As we get set to get on out of here, one of the questions I've always wanted to ask you. You went to the finals, but obviously y'all ran into Kobe and Shaq. That's really what happened.
In their prime.
In their prime. When you reflect on your career, the absence of a championship, I want to know, A, how much do you think about that, if at all, and B, what's the one reason you believe that you didn't capture a championship in your career?
Well, let me say this first before AI answers. He shouldn't worry about not winning a championship because he was not a championship level player. Nothing against the brother, and I'm sure that many of his fans may get upset by me saying that. It's just the truth. When you look at the history of the NBA, how many championship level players have played in the NBA? Maybe 15? Maybe. You're talking about Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, Jerry West, Oscar, Kareem, Magic, Bird, Isaiah, Jordan, Tim Duncan, Shaq, Kobe, LeBron, D Wade. Like, how many is that? Steph? It's not that many. Allen Iverson was a player who played great. He was not a great player. For the most part, NBA championships, especially players who are able to win more than one, are won by great players, not players who play great. Now, every once in a while, you have little hiccups in the NBA when they go through a little lull. Like in the late 70s where the Bullets won one and the Supersonics won one. But at least the Bullets had Elvin Hayes, who was an all-time great player. There was a year where the Golden State Warriors won one in the mid-70s. I think 75 they won it, but they had Rick Barry, an all-time great player. He just didn't win multiple. So, I mean, you have that throughout the NBA, where certain players who play great don't get championships, or they're just not on the right team. That's why I stated, you think that if Alex English and George Gervin could have teamed up with Artis Gilmore back in the mid-'80s, they would not have? Of course they would have. If Barkley and Dominique Wilkins and Patrick Ewing could have teamed up in the late 80s, of course they would have. It's just the mindset was different because the atmosphere was different. Please keep in mind that full, unrestricted free agency did not come into the NBA until the 1988-89 season. So that changed how players thought about their abilities to move from team to team, about their own mobility.
Dwell on it. Obviously, it was a dream of mine, and it didn't happen. But God did so many other things for me.
Good for you, brother, for keeping things in the right perspective. Be happy that you got out of the environment that you got out of, especially with your poor decision making. So it's good that you understand what the Most High did for you
in my life that He didn't have to help me accomplish. So I've done a lot. I'm satisfied. I gave everything that I had. That's what made me feel so good about it, because I knew I gave everything that I had out there night in and night out, and I played every game like it was my last. And my teammates did as well. They tried the best they could. The teams that I've had, I wouldn't trade them to play on a mega team for nothing in the world.
The only reason I ask the question is because when I think about Ben Simmons, you know what I find myself thinking about when I look at him? What if AI had him playing the point and AI was on the court? That's what I do. That's what I do.
I love Derek Snow. I love
Don't torture yourself.
I love him too. I'm probably going to get in trouble for asking you that question. I love him too. But then Ben Simmons is on another level.
I don't do it. What if I played with LeBron or I played with Shaq?
You never thought about that?
I'm just saying, in arguments that I have in barbershops and stuff like that, it would have been totally different. I'd be sitting here with 3 or 4 championships. But it is what it is.
Yeah, if ifs and buts was candies and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas, bro. Fact of the matter is, you did not get to play with Shaq or Tim Duncan or any of those elite players. What is Allen Iverson really saying? He's saying that he understands that he's not on that level. That's what I'm stating when I say when you look back in the annals of the NBA timeline, you have to be an all-time great player to win multiple championships. And he was not that. And by him saying, what if I played with Shaq? That's him saying, I was not an all-time great player. I played great, but I was not an all-time great player. He may not even understand what he said when he just said that.
Be honest. AI, you're being very humble and you're not taking shots at your teammates. You didn't play in your prime with another 5-star player, with another MVP caliber player.
Well, the question is, could he have played with another 5-star player in his prime? Back in 2000, 2001, could he have played with another 5-star player? No, I don't think so. And back then, in the late 90s into the early 2000s, that was the vestige of the NBA, almost like a samurai feudalship, where each player was in their own city, and that's what they were known for. Vince Carter was in Toronto, AI was in Philly, McGrady was in Orlando. That was like their own, they were like feudal lords, and that's where they stayed. And they were not thinking on that level of teaming up with each other back then, even though there was the potentiality for Tim Duncan and Grant Hill to go to Orlando and team up with Tracy McGrady. That's a very underreported story that almost happened. The only thing that stopped Tim Duncan from signing with the Orlando Magic was the fact that he asked Doc Rivers if he asked him if his family could fly on the team plane, and Doc Rivers told him no. And that's the reason why Tim Duncan did not leave the San Antonio Spurs. NBA history could have been very different.
Which Kobe and Shaq did. That's why they got the chips.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah,
I worked with what I had. I guess that defines me as a player in history. I worked with what I had.
Still changed the game. We're seeing players
By the
try
way,
to emulate
thank
you.
you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
AI,
Congratulations.
thank you so much.
All right, Max, Molly.
Appreciate
Book.
you. We're looking
Appreciate
forward to the
y'all.
book.
Come on,
You
yeah.
gotta let us know when the
Oh
book's
yeah,
out.
yeah.
Come back.
Definitely go out and get it. It's gonna be something different. Trust me.
I'm sure it is, and I'm sure it's not the
I'm gonna go out and
PC
get that.
version.
And the sneakers.
All right. Good luck to Philly tonight too. Bye, guys. Still.
But anyway, that's it on the Allen Iverson series. And in regards to Allen Iverson and some of his affiliations, him being a Boule member, things of that nature, Lucifer, and I'll probably save that for another video. But anyway, peace.